Most entrepreneurs think that they own a business. But if your business falls apart the moment you take a day off, you don't own a business. You own a cage and you're the prisoner. Now, I used to be that guy. On paper, I ran a 7-figure e-commerce store. But behind the scenes, it was total chaos. Whenever I left, orders piled up, customers got angry, and my team couldn't move without me. I was the system, and it was slowly killing me. Now here's the reality. If your business stops when you stop, you're not the CEO. You're a customer service rep with a fancy title. But it doesn't have to be that way. Today, I run 2 7-figure businesses, work about 20 hours a week, and spend most of my time hanging out with my family. Not because I hired a massive team, not because I outsourced everything, but because I built systems. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to build these systems step by step. Plus, I'll show you how I used AI to completely eliminate 4 hours of daily labor without hiring a single person. Now let's start with the question no one asks. What is a system? To me, a system is a collection of repeatable processes that produce consistent, reliable results without you being involved. Now at Bumblebee Linens, which is my company, we sell personalized handkerchiefs. Customers submit a message and we stitch it onto fabric. Now it sounds simple, but behind the scenes, there is a full system. We take the message and run it through specialized software that converts it to a machine-readable embroidery file. That file gets sent to an embroidery machine, and then someone loads the handkerchief, stitches the design, and quality checks the result. But here's where it gets tricky. If the message is too short, the font has to be resized. Some fonts don't support certain characters, like dashes or accents, so we need a fallback plan. Without a system, this becomes a nightmare. Now, if you handed one of our personalized orders to someone with no guide, you'd get non-stop questions, like, is this font too small? What if the character's missing? Can I change the layout? Now you multiply that by 100 orders a day, and then suddenly you're the bottleneck. And if your team can't operate without your constant input, you're not building freedom, you're building burnout. So I built a system, one that defines the rules, removes the guesswork, and lets people and machines run the process without me. Now today, that embroidery setup runs itself. Every morning at 8 a.m., a script pulls the personalized orders, generates all the embroidery files, and then sends them to the machines. There are no humans involved, no stress, and I'm not the bottleneck. Now this process used to take one full-time employee 4 hours per day. Now it takes 0. That is the power of a system amplified by automation. Now I've been teaching e-commerce for over 14 years, and here's the #1 mistake I see new business owners make. They build a business that depends entirely on them. Every decision, every task, every approval all flows through one person. And they justify it because they want to stay in control. But in reality, it's self-sabotage, and the cost of running a business like this, it is brutal. For starters, everything lives in your head. There's no documentation and no clear processes, just a mental checklist that only you can access. Not only is that inefficient, it's risky, because if something happens to you, the whole business grinds to a halt. It's also mentally exhausting. If you have to figure out how to do a task every single time, that overhead burns you out fast. And if nothing's documented, you can't delegate. And if you can't delegate, you can't hire. And if you can't hire, you can't scale. And if you can't scale, you're stuck doing everything yourself forever. Now, I know a lot of business owners who say, no big deal, I'll just hire someone to do the work. But then they complain that they can't find good people. Well, the truth is that they've never built systems. Everything's in their brain, so when they hire, they are setting people up to fail. Systems are what create consistency. They're the reason your output stays high quality and free of dumb, avoidable mistakes. So how do you start building systems? Step 1 is to get everything out of your head. Open up a spreadsheet or grab a notebook and then write down every task you handle regularly. Daily, weekly, monthly. Just the stuff that keeps the business running. Now don't worry about emergencies or one-off projects. Focus on the repeatable work. The things you do over and over and over again without even thinking about it. And then you want to group them into categories. That embroidery process I mentioned earlier, that's order fulfillment. Writing email campaigns, that's marketing. Updating inventory, that's operations. When you finish your document, I guarantee that you'll be shocked by how much you actually do. I know I was, and it's a little overwhelming. But here's the truth. You don't have to systematize everything today. That's impossible. What you do need is a simple way to decide what to prioritize first. By the way, the word prioritize always gets me into trouble at home. Every time my wife asks me to do something, I say, okay, honey, what is the priority, like on a scale of 1 to 10? And she's like, it's a 10. Everything I give you is always a 10. So yeah, use that word carefully if you work with someone you care about. Anyway, once you've listed out all your tasks, the next step is to rate each one. I use a dead simple scoring system that tells me exactly what to tackle and what to ignore. Number 1 is frequency. How often does this task need to be done? A 10 means it's something that happens constantly. 2 is the pain. How frustrating or annoying is it? A 10 means you absolutely hate doing it. 3 is impact. How important is the task to your business? A 10 means it's mission critical. And finally, we have ease of systemization. How easy would it be to create a repeatable process for it? A 10 means it's super straightforward. By the way, if you're interested in learning how to start your own profitable online store, make sure you take my free 6-day e-commerce mini course below. It's 100% free, and I guarantee you'll learn a lot. Now, let me give you an example of this rating system in action with my business. When I decided to automate the embroidery process I described earlier, here's how I rated it. Frequency, I gave it a 10 because we get a ton of embroidery orders every single day. For pain, I gave it an 8 because it's tedious and repetitive. For impact, I gave it a 7 because doing it manually was causing a lot of mistakes and typos. And for ease of systemization, I gave it a 6. It takes some amount of setup, but it's doable. That gave me a total score of 31. Now for me, any task that scores above 28 gets instantly flagged for systemization. Now your threshold might be different, and that's totally fine. The point is to use these numbers to take the guesswork out of the process. Scoring tasks makes prioritization clear, objective, and actionable. And what usually happens next is that I end up crossing off a bunch of low-impact tasks altogether. So for example, I recently realized that posting on Instagram threads was getting almost zero engagement, and to be honest, I didn't have a solid strategy for it anyway. So instead of trying to force it, I simply removed it from the list. I can always revisit it later when I have a better plan. But the key here is focus. Systemize what matters. Eliminate what doesn't. And in general, if a task is not tied to a revenue or a strategic goal, not measurable or tracked, and not something customers or your team notice if it disappears, then just get rid of it. Now the next step is to assign owners. Start by asking who's doing this task right now and who should be doing it. Now if the ideal owner isn't you, that's perfect. That's exactly the goal. But here's the rule. You must assign a single person to own it. No shared responsibilities, no group assignments. There's a principle I live by. If more than one person is responsible for something, then no one is. A system or process without clear ownership is a system designed to fail. When everyone is responsible, no one feels accountable, no one steps up to improve it, no one fixes it when it breaks, and guess who ends up picking up all the slack? You do, as the entrepreneur. Now there's a classic story that perfectly illustrates this point. It's about 4 people. Everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. There was an important job to do, and everybody was asked to do it. Everybody was sure that somebody would take care of it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did. Now it's a funny story, but it perfectly captures what happens in businesses that lack clear ownership. Without defined accountability, nothing gets done, and it all ends up back on your plate. But what if you don't have a team? It doesn't matter. You can still assign ideal roles even if they don't exist yet. And in fact, some of those roles might go to AI, and we'll get to that shortly. But once you map this out, your first hire becomes obvious. Now from there, the next step is documentation. Because you can't just hand something off and expect someone to magically know how to do it. And this is where you start transferring what's in your head onto paper, or better yet, into a video. Now I'm a lazy guy, so here's what I like to do. I either record myself training an employee on the task, or I use Loom to film myself actually doing it. Even better, sometimes I'll train a team member and then have them create the documentation. That way, I only have to do it once. Now these days, I prefer video because it's easier to follow and can be rewatched anytime. Plus, with today's AI tools, you can turn that video into a written checklist in seconds. Now once your top tasks are documented, you're finally ready to delegate. And at this point, before I even consider hiring a human, I always ask myself, can this be done with software or AI? Even if you're tech averse, never underestimate AI because it can handle way more than you think. Earlier, I showed you how I use software to automate my entire embroidery process. For customer service, I built something I call SteveBot. It's an AI trained on every blog post, podcast, video, and course lesson I've ever produced. When a student sends in a question, SteveBot instantly replies with an answer, plus links to relevant content for deeper learning. For my online store, I created another bot trained on all of our store's data: product descriptions, images, specs, facts, and policies. My bot answers product-related questions and makes personalized recommendations, and if it doesn't know the answer, it automatically escalates the query up to a human rep. If AI can't handle the task, then, and only then, do I delegate it to a real person. And here's the best part. Remember those task documents you just created? They're also perfect training material for ChatGPT or any AI assistant. Just feed in the instructions, and suddenly, you've got a reliable virtual team member that's always available, never forgets, and scales effortlessly. When you follow this process, it changes how you see the world, and you'll start to notice systems everywhere. Take Chipotle. Ever notice how they weigh the meat before adding it to your burrito? That's not random, that's a system. It ensures consistency, controls costs, and reduces waste across thousands of locations. Walk into any Starbucks, and you'll see the same kind of structure no matter the location. A customer places an order, and the barista writes it on the cup using standard shorthand: decaf, half calf, oat milk, extra pump, whatever the request. That cup then gets passed down the line to another barista who follows a precise sequence to make the drink. Ingredients are pre-measured, the order of operations is always the same, and everything from espresso shot timers to syrup charts to milk steaming is standardized. Now the final step is to focus your time on the things you actually want to work on and delegate everything you don't. Today, I run 2 7-figure businesses and work about 20 hours a week. That's not because I hustle harder. It's because I've systemized the chaos and removed myself from the day-to-day. Now, if there's a voice in your head saying, well, if I delegate everything away, then I won't be doing anything in my business anymore. Is that okay? Yes, it's more than okay, because that's the goal. You're allowed to have free time. You're allowed to step back, and when you do it right, you can finally take a real vacation, guilt-free, knowing that your business won't fall apart without you. Now that you understand how to build systems, make sure you watch this video here on exactly how I would get started with my online store today if I started from complete scratch.